Welcome to day 7. We are what we eat and drink. And I want to talk a little bit about my journey, about the nutrition and the way that I feed myself and how that's evolved and how it's all to do with choosing me. And I don't know if you can see in the camera here, if I hold it close, maybe, it's a little bit blurred. It's my book, Leading with Light. Oh, there it is. You can see it a little bit. I'm the second chapter in here, and I do talk about the various ways that I have been on a journey to deepening into choosing me, and putting myself and my well-being first. And the way that I eat and drink has definitely been a massive part of this. So let's just get into this. So first, I just want to start by saying that, you know, we know that many of the nutritional habits that we have in society are not great. We know they're less than healthy mostly. But yeah, it's why is it then that even though we know that we give in to temptation so easily, or maybe you don't, but for many of us, we do. And I think there are like 5 big things for me that are part of that happening. So one thing for me is the cultural influence. When I started to change the way that I ate, the first thing, which I'll come back to in a moment, was to do with sugar. And I just found that, oh my gosh, this is everywhere. We have celebrations and everything tied up to eating, lots of processed foods and sugar and fat as well. And it's all part of our cultural way to celebrate. It's like, let's make a birthday cake. And for me, it all used to be like, oh, but I need to treat myself. I don't want to, like, not go without. So I would kind of go along and go, it's a special occasion. But there was always a special occasion. The next day you go to work and it will be somebody's birthday and they bring stuff in. And there's always seemed to be some reason to be celebrating, which is good, but to celebrate it with sweet things. And then every time I go somewhere, like I'd go out for a coffee with my mom when I lived in the UK. We'd go out and meet each other in town and we go, oh, let's go and get a treat. We'd be like, treat ourselves. But all the time when I'd say, let's treat ourselves, it involved me eating things that were not good for me. So it was the opposite of a treat, actually. It's like, oh, yeah, let's go and poison ourselves. So it was just really part of my culture growing up in the UK to celebrate with foods and with drinks. And there was a time where I never had I mean, when I was young, I was a bit of a party girl, and that was part of the culture for sure. And I was never like an alcoholic or anything like that. But I just did notice that it didn't make me feel very good. So I didn't have a year where I didn't drink. I just thought, right, I'm not drinking at all. And now I don't drink hardly ever. Like it's maybe like at New Year or some kind of I'm going to a conference in Australia on Thursday and I'll have some glasses of bubbles there. But it's really rare that I actually even drink at all now. But I remember when I was doing my teetotal year, and it just felt like it's everywhere. I went to a conference at that time as well, and I was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to avoid it. And it was like the choice was alcohol or sugary drinks. And if I didn't want sugary drinks, it was just, plain old water left. There was no other healthy alternatives. I mean, water's great, but I was like, wow, there's nothing else really. It's like Coke or alcohol. So we do live in a culture which kind of just makes it very difficult sometimes for us to change our habits. So that's the first thing. The second thing I found for me was busyness. When my kids were little, and because there's only a year and 3 days between them, I used to be sometimes so exhausted and run around doing all these activities with them. I'd come in, I'd put on the kettle, and then I'd just grab a packet of biscuits out of the cupboard and I'd sit and dunk the whole lot. Like I would just be like, one biscuit with a cup of tea after another. And I just used to just OD on the stuff because I was just so busy. And I was like, I wanted something fast because I was so exhausted. So I think when we're busy, you can go more easily for fast food and, highly processed carbohydrates and sugars and fats because, you're wanting to be satiated like now because you've already gone way too past the point of like where you wanted to normally eat in not in a normal healthy way. And I know for a lot of people, emotional stress can be a massive reason, and eating can really be a coping mechanism. If people are lonely, or they're depressed, or just not coping generally, there's some crisis, and their go-to is to eat. And so for a lot of people, it can be the opposite as well. For some people, they stop eating, um, which is also not good, right? So when I say we are what we eat, we definitely need to eat. So I'm definitely not promoting the alternative here. But emotional stress works both ways. You can either eat when you don't want to, or you can stop eating altogether. So emotional stress is a massive one that's linked with the way that we eat. And then there's the good old food industry and their profits. Did you know that they actually created something called the bliss point? The bliss point is a point where they balance just the right amount of sugar and salt and the things that make us kind of addicted to it and make it kind of yummier. I was reading a book which I'll introduce you to, I think in the next slide. Um, and in that book, it was talking about how Kellogg's, people that make cornflakes, Special K, all that, they put different amounts of sugar in their Special K in different countries according to their palate. So, for example, in the UK, it's really, really high because people have got very much a sweet tooth there. And if they don't, they'd lose market share. So if they feel the market share slipping, they just pump some more in there. So whether we realize it or not, we are being manipulated through our palate into buying things. And they can become quite addictive as well, which I will go into. So that was something that really shocked me about a decade ago when I realized this, and I felt quite annoyed, and I felt quite I was quite, what's the word? I really wanted to strongly go in the opposite direction. I was very, very committed, that's the word I'm looking for, to breaking the manipulation that I was under in terms of food. Because it just hit me how much my choices were being manipulated rather than being freely made. I'm not even sure if they do that in New Zealand, but I know in England they pump out bakery smells in the supermarket. Like, they actually, it's not just the way that things taste, it's the way that they smell as well, the way that they place them in the supermarket and ends of the aisles, and they do all kinds of things to get us to eat stuff that we are trying not to do, but to put temptation in our way. There's no wonder that they put bars of chocolate right at the place where we're waiting to check out at the supermarket. So we are being manipulated, and that makes it very difficult to not give in to temptation, right? And then the other thing is we have this human tendency to focus on the short term versus the long-term gratification. And I don't know if you've ever seen, there was like a little study where they had these little kids and they put them one by one in a room, and they put like a little sweet treat in front of them. And they said if they could wait until somebody came back, they could have more. And they had a filming camera, on them, but virtually none of them could do that. They'd like try and try and try. And after so long, they'd just pop it in their mouth and be like, okay. Because the instant gratification trigger was just so strong that as they were looking at it, they were salivating and they wanted it more and more until they couldn't cope with the temptation anymore, and they popped it in their mouth, even with the promise of more if they waited. That long-term gratification just doesn't do it for us as humans. So that is a problem because we can, know that it's much better for our long-term being not to eat certain things and to choose this over this. But the short-term part of us is going like the little kid, no, I just want to put it in my mouth. So these are some of the challenges. And if you can think of other challenges, please share them with me. These are some of the things that I have realized have been difficult for me to overcome in the past. So the book that I was talking about is called Sweet Poison, and I actually read his second book, which was a Sweet Poison Quick Plan, about a decade ago. And I came to this realization, oh my gosh, sugar is actually a poison. And it might not be killing us instantly, like some poisons, but like the song, it is kind of killing us softly, killing us slowly. It is actually quite bad for us. And when I read that book, it was so amazing because it was by a guy called David Gillespie, as you can see here, who he he was kind of a lawyer originally, so he really went into the detail of this and he really investigated it. And so it was such a great read. And then in this second book that I read, The Quick Plan, he had all these recipes and different ways to unhook yourself. So it was not just, hey, you should do this, but this is how you do it. So I found it really incredible. And so a decade ago, I decided I was going to unhook myself. And it was really successful. For 4 whole years, I didn't have, any unnatural fructose sugars. I was such a little sugar Nazi, I tell you, and I had my whole family off the poison. I've got to admit that I have returned to having it in moderation. But what's really good is that 4 years that I had, and I don't think you need to do it for 4 years, but that time period really helped me to lose a really strong addiction that I had. I grew up with so much sugar. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, and I remember as we turned into the 80s and soda streams became a thing. And, every household got one of these soda streams. And we all had these bottles of syrup and we were making drinks like no tomorrow, And yeah, I mean, I've never been really much of a fizzy drinker, but that soda stream got me, I tell you. But I just used to have so much sugar in my diet in the UK as a kid. And that just really set the tone for what happened next. And I just continued on. Like I told you the story about packs of biscuits, I was actually really a bit of a sugar monster. And so it helped me to break that, what I would call an addiction. And so I am able to have little bits of sugar now, but I still try to minimize it as much as I can. And this is why. So what I uncovered from my research, and it's in this book as well, is that there is a difference between fructose sugar and glucose sugar. So table sugar contains half of each, like 50-50 fructose and glucose. So you'll have heard of fructose. It comes from fruit, right? Um, so you think, oh, well, that must be good. And you'll see it on packets. Oh, it's fructose. You think, oh, it's amazing. It's from fruit. But the thing is, when we eat fructose from a fruit, it's got fiber in it. And that counteracts the damage of the fructose. So when we have fruit, we're all good, natural fruit, right? But they extract something called high fructose corn syrup, which is just pumping us with this stuff that our body is not designed to deal with, because the fructose is really addictive. Because if you think back in the day, that was kind of like the thing where we would like hunt it out. We'd find it and we'd be like, yeah, and we'd just fill up on that because we didn't know when we were going to find it again. Maybe we weren't going to come across those fruits and berries and things for a long time. So our body isn't designed to actually deal with it. It is highly addictive to us in terms of we want more and more and more and more, where the glucose on its own doesn't have that effect. It's the fructose that's got the kind of bingy, cravey, addictive um, behaviors attached to it. The other thing that fructose does is it switches off the leptins to the brain. that tell us when we're full. So we're basically not knowing that we're full. So we just keep eating and eating more of everything else. So not necessarily eating more sugar, but eating more of everything. So we just have an increased appetite when we're eating, when we've got a diet with quite a lot of fructose in it. The other thing is the body's, like I said, not designed to deal with it. So it actually gets deposited as like fat in the liver. So it causes fatty liver in the same way that alcohol does it, which leads to all the metabolic diseases and all the heart disease and all of those things. That's what's happening. So we're not, like I say, we can't cope with it. So it has to go somewhere, and that's where it goes, to the liver. One of the biggest problems I had when I was so addicted to sugar is that my energy levels were like a roller coaster. So I will come in with my two babies from my activity, cramming those biscuits with my cups of tea, and I'd get like a quick surge of energy, and then I'd have a massive crush where I just didn't feel like I'd get off the couch. So I just was on an energy roller coaster. And when I cut it out, when I did my 4 years, I just remember having like the most even energy I could ever remember having. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? I actually have energy and not this like crash, like zooming up and crashing kind of roller coaster effect. And also the weight gain. I lost in the first year that I did the whole sweet poison quit plan. I lost 18 kgs of weight that had been creeping on and creeping on and creeping on. And so the, that's one of the things that can happen when you eat too much fructose is that you can gain weight and you can become, insulin resistant, which can, result in things like diabetes and things like that. Um, for skin as well, I've always had a kind of a decent skin, but I know lots of people get quite a lot of breakouts and many other issues, more sagging, more wrinkles with eating a high sugar diet. They can often get depression as well because um, you get dopamine from the sugar, so the withdrawals can be quite harsh. Obviously, dental issues and an environment that's conducive to cancer. So when people um, are told that they have cancer, one of the first things that they do is try to restrict how much sugar there is because in that environment, everything grows. Same with candida as well. If you are someone who suffers from candida, you'll want to heavily reduce your sugars and your carbohydrates that leads to sugars as well. So, bread, lots of bread and things like that does the same thing. So yeah, but that is the thing. When I'm talking about the addictive part, I'm talking about the fructose sugars. But yeah, it's a massive, massive area. And I just wanted to talk about this because it was the first way that I really started to choose me because I realized how much better I felt, for one, how much healthier I was, and how I wasn't being manipulated as much by the powers that be in the food industry. And it was probably my first step into choosing me and my health in terms of what food was going into my mouth. Since then, there's been a lot of other revelations. About 8 years ago, I started to realize I was quite intolerant to gluten. So it started off with bloating, a lot of bloating. And then it got more and more severe as the years went on, where I actually got very, very bad stomach cramps. And then I got like even rashes on occasion as well, to the point where I haven't now eaten gluten for years because for me, I am choosing me. I am not going to choose instant gratification and then endure a whole load of pain and horrible symptoms. So for me, I choose not to eat gluten. I think my personal opinion is I don't think gluten is particularly great for anyone. Um, and, I think we can all do with limiting the amounts of white flours, white sugars, all the white things in our diet because it's really processed. But obviously, I still have my things that I want to eat from time to time, my gluten-free versions. But even those, I try to minimize them because I know they're just not good for me. Because I'm gluten-free, it helps me to minimize some of these stuff in the top left-hand corner. Um, anyway, because I just can't, because it hurts too much. Another thing that I stopped eating dairy. Oh, how long ago now? I stopped eating it completely in 2015, I think it was. And in the lockdown, I let it creep back in again for a little while, realized I felt awful again, and then stopped. Um, there are times if I'm eating in certain countries where it's really difficult for me to eat gluten free. I'm also vegetarian. Um, that eating gluten free, like completely vegan, is pretty difficult. I do eat eggs now. I didn't for 4 years, but I do eat eggs now. And I listened to my body, and my body was like, no, the eggs feel okay, but the cheese and the milk and all of that stuff does not feel okay in my body. So I will cheat on occasions just because I don't have any other option. Um, and there'll be a little bit mixed in, but it's not something that I choose to purchase or choose to do. And I'll eat coconut yogurt instead. So this just want to share my journey with you here. I know there are people that have nut allergies. I know for myself, I love nuts. They make a great handy snack, but I do know that if I eat too many, they're very difficult for my stomach to process, and I do get quite bloated and gassy. So I'm just aware of what they do to my body. And then you've got quinoa, which is um, on the left there, which is apparently very healthy. But for some people, and I happen to be one of them, they're very hard for me to digest, and I get very, very bad stomach cramps with quinoa. So if you've ever noticed that, you might be one of those people too. But it's good just to start listening to your body and knowing what it's trying to tell you. The worst thing for me at the moment is in the bottom right-hand corner, soy. I cannot tolerate soy at all. I actually vomit now. I get very bad stomach cramps, and I actually vomit and have a massive reaction to it. That's now become the one that I have the most reaction to. So, yeah, my body little by little has just got more and more uh, sensitive to telling. I'm very not sensitive. I think it was always sensitive, but it was just so numbed by all the rubbish that I put in it. But now I can actually hear my body and what's going on in my body. And it tells me quite violently now if something's not good for me. So I do really appreciate that. I really appreciate how my body is cooperating with me to let me know what is good for me. So um I want to also share with you a little bit about something else that I found has been really good for me and choosing me. Like I said, in this series, I just want to share things that maybe are things that you might want to try or not, but things that have been really helpful for me. So, actually, today, before I go into this, today I went for my first ever colonic irrigation. A very weird experience because I am going to be doing a 3 month massive process actually for my health. And it's the first step is to clean the pipes, so to speak. So it was super interesting. You get to even watch what's coming out. It's like, oh my gosh. Because for years and years, stuff can be really stuck in there in the intestines, and it can really prevent you from taking in the nutrition from the nutrients from your foods. So you could be putting lots of really good nutrients in, but maybe you're not accessing them. Maybe there's leaky gut and all kinds of things. So I'm going through a big process at the minute, and I've done many detoxes before, but this is for sure the most intense. I've done like a couple of months. This is going to be 3 months, and it's going to be quite a challenge, but I'm really excited because I know on the end of it, I'm going to be feeling even more amazing than the things I've already changed so far. So remember, it's just step by step, little by little. And so sharing my process, how I got here, I started to play with intermittent fasting quite a few years ago. And I've even done some even longer fasts as well. So one thing that's apparently very good for us is the 72-hour water fast, where we get into, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, autophagy, which is where your body really goes into a massive repair and regeneration. Yeah, like a phase. I only managed to get to 60 hours. I got to 60 hours. Well done. I didn't make it to the 72, but I would like to have a go at doing that again this year. So, intermittent fasting. So, when you don't eat for some time, it gives your body a chance to really start to repair and do the things it needs to do. So it changes your hormone levels, for example, and that makes it more accessible to the stored body fat. And and that helps to also, start that cellular repair process as well. So when we give our digestion a break, it can go into all these different functions, the hormones of the cells and the genes. So first of all, the insulin level, the blood level of the insulin drops significantly when you fast, which then promotes the fat burning. Like I was just saying, the stored fat becomes more accessible. You get HGH, which is the hormone, sorry, the human growth hormone. So your blood level of the HGH will go up massively, and higher levels of that hormone actually promote fat burning and muscle gain, as well as lots of other benefits. So it's great in that it actually stimulates the HGH. The cellular repair, like I said, that helps to remove the waste material from our cells, and the gene expression as well. Several genes and molecules related to protection from disease and our longevity are kind of activated. So there's so many benefits that are related to these areas. So to kind of summarize the benefits of intermittent fasting, which I'll call IF, is the insulin level drops, your HGH increases, which gives you that cell process repair process. The intermittent fasting helps you to eat fewer calories because you're not eating as much, you're not eating all of the day. So that's an automatic shift. And it also boosts your metabolism at the same time. And it's really good for the visceral fat in particular. So that's the fat that we hold around the middle. And you probably know that the fat that you hold around the middle is the one that's closely related to the problems with the heart and heart attacks and all of that kind of stuff. So if we can reduce the visceral fat, that is super important. And I know for me, I'm in that time where I'm heading into the menopause. That's when the visceral fat starts to come on for women as well. So anything we can do to help keep that minimize the beta for our heart. Also, intermittent fasting can reduce your insulin resistance, like I said, lower those blood sugar levels, lower your risk for type 2 diabetes. It can also reduce oxidative stress and inflammation in the body. So oxidative stress, you see that happening. If you cut an apple and it goes brown, that's oxidative stress. Often we put a lemon on it to reduce it, but that actually happens in our body because we're taking in oxygen. So we have oxidative stress on our organs and all inside of our bodies, and that creates inflammation. And so intermittent fasting can really reduce all of that. And inflammation is massively linked to so many different diseases and to aging. And so anything we can do to help that is brilliant. And also, I've just mentioned about the heart disease, but also intermittent fasting can, lower your risk of things like blood pressure, cholesterol levels, and many other things. So you can dig into it a little bit more, but that's my summary of why I think intermittent fasting is amazing. So also sorry, I forgot I had another slide here. This autophagy that I explained before, which is where we go into this massive cell renewal, can really help protect us against, and studies have shown this, against certain cancers and, these degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. My grandma had Alzheimer's. I never want that. Anything that I can do to protect myself from that, I'm going to do it. But they have noticed in animal studies that there's a massive link between intermittent fasting helping prevent Alzheimer's disease in particular. There's also links to do with sugar as well, reducing sugar. and Alzheimer's prevention. So yeah, fasting has just got so many benefits. They've shown that in animal studies it can help prevent cancer as well and reduce the side effects of chemo. So if people are having cancer, it can really help them with that as well, for having the chemo therapy. It can also help with your brain health, with the growth of new neurons. How amazing is that? And protect the brain from any further damage. And so generally, according to the animal studies, it helps us live longer as well. Harder to prove in people, but it definitely has been proven in animals, and we are an animal after all. So in general, then, going back to this kind of like the food and choosing you, these are just some things that I've played with, and there's other things I've played with as well to do with my diet and my nutrition and what I'm putting inside of my body. But as that famous guy once said, we are what we eat. And so it is really important for us to listen to our body and notice the physical symptoms, but mainly how we feel after, certain foods. So for me now, it's like I can be conscious when I go to choose something. It's like, how is that going to impact me in the long term? I can go to that long-term gratification of feeling good rather than the instant gratification. For example, the other day I was talking about the caffeine. When I go to make a cup of tea after 2 o'clock, and I might by accident reach, I have the decaf here and the caffeine ones. As I go to reach for the caffeine, I've got that part of me now that goes, oh no, don't have that. Go to that one because you're not going to sleep as well tonight. You're not going to feel as rested. You're not going to feel as great. I can also feel like if I go for certain foods that are going to make me feel terrible or going to give me pain, it gives me the chance to evaluate my decision and go, yeah, no, I don't want to feel like that. And so that really, really has helped me massively, massively. But it is about making sustainable changes and not these drastic short-term ones. So sustainable changes mean little baby steps, not try to change everything at once. And it will be more sustainable if it's something manageable and something that you can do and doesn't feel overwhelming. So start small. The other thing that I think is really important is to just focus on putting good stuff in. The good stuff crowds out the stuff that we want to avoid. So rather than feeling like we're punishing ourselves, we can just start to put more good things in. So that means things like eating, more regularly unprocessed home cooked food, like doing that more frequently to crowd out the choices that maybe are not supporting you and are not choosing you. When it comes to fasting, you might not want to go straight to a fast. Like some of the most popular ones is like the fast for 16 hours, eat for 8 hours. Or you can do the ones where you fast for 5 days and have like 2 days off. Not don't eat for 5 days, but you do intermittent fasting for 5 days, sorry. But if you just try to, eat earlier in an evening and then maybe take your breakfast a bit longer. Just try to increase the time that your digestion is at rest. Just expand it little by little rather than going full on from, you know, if you were somebody who eats at 10 o'clock at night and has your breakfast at like 7 in the morning, like maybe going straight for 16 hours might be really painful for you. So just like expand it little by little more. Just try and play with it a little bit. Another thing that's really helped me is to plan for when I know there's times of temptation, like celebrations and things like that. So it's like I might say to myself, well, I know I'm going to allow myself, this much, or I'm going to have that, or I will actually prepare things and take them with me. Often I have to do that anyway. Being vegetarian and gluten free, I have to prepare and take things with me so that I can have something and I don't feel like I'm missing out and things like that. So I take something with me that I know is going to fit with making me feel good and also feel like I'm joining in the fun. Also, healthy snacks, having them around and ready for when you're busy. Because remember, one of the big triggers is when we're busy, that's when we reach for something quick. So if you've got like nuts and fruits and things on the ready that you can just grab, where it's not like it's going to satiate you, it's going to actually support you at the same time. Having some alternative practices as well for when you might be bored or upset. Those other things, those emotional triggers that can trigger the poor food choices as well. Or in some cases, like addiction, where we know that that's when we're going to go for those things that we're kind of highly addicted to, like the sugar-filled things, the donuts. I'm, it's so weird the donuts, because that's a combination of two things I don't want to have, the sugar, or three things, the sugar, the fat, and the gluten. Oh dear. So that the gluten's really helped me out, not eating that. The other thing is avoiding certain aisles of the supermarket. When I cut out the sugar for that 4 years, I just used to go on the outside aisles. There was nothing in the middle at all that I would really buy. I was very, very disciplined at that point. If you don't think you can be disciplined enough to avoid certain aisles, like the biscuit aisles, maybe try online shopping. Because if you don't have them at home, that's half the battle. If they're not in the cupboard, then the temptation's not there, right? As it means you've got to actually think about it to go and get it. So it's not like that quick reaction where it's gone in, like the little kid in the study who's just popping the little sweet treat. Um, we've got time to think and evaluate and go, do I really want to do that? So that does help. Drinking water, we've talked about drinking water before, but drinking water to avoid craving food, because sometimes we're just thirsty, we're not even hungry. So drinking water can help. Just if you feel a craving, just grab some water and then just wait and ask yourself if you still want it in like 15 minutes time. Maybe you don't. Give yourself some wiggle room, give yourself some cheat days, some cheat meals. Sometimes, you don't want to feel like you're punishing yourself. But I do feel like for me that title of that book, Sweet Poison, really helped me because it helped me realize that whereas before when I tried to not eat things to do with my weight loss journey or whatever in the past, or my bikini diet, when I'd avoided sugar for that reason, I always felt like I was missing out. And I always felt like, it was kind of like a punishment. But once I started to realize that that was so bad for me and why it was so bad for me, I didn't see it like that anymore. I actually had more of like, why would I want to put that in my body rather than oh gosh, I can't eat that. It's not fair. So that can really help. But having, just being realistic because we do live in this society with all these cultural um, things that crop up and celebrations, and you don't want to feel like you're living a very, very boring dull life. So if you want if you want to have wiggle room, you should have wiggle room, and I have wiggle room. And just the last thing really is to remember to choose you, that long-term you, not that short-term you that's craving that immediate gratification, but the long-term you who's going to feel energized, who's going to feel healthy, who's going to be around to be with their kids, their grandkids, see what happens in this world, who's going to rock into old age feeling amazing, looking amazing, glowing skin. Like choose that version of you that's really, really in their best version. And that's what really all I wanted to say today about the nutrition is just to consider it, to consider your choices, to consider the little changes that you can start to make your to make a friend with your body and to choose your body because your body has to support you for a very long time, right? So we want to treat it really well. And it dawned on me like a few years ago, we've got this little dog and she's 4 years old now. And my daughter will go, oh, we need to check if she can eat that. We need to check if she can eat that. And you're always going to Google to check. And we go, no. Oh, we can't give that to the dog. It's not good for her. Oh, we can't give that to the dog. It's not good for her. Well, that could even potentially kill her. And we are so conscious when it comes to our pets, but yet when it comes to ourselves, we're not often very conscious about the actual effects of these foods. And we know the diet, what a dog should have or a certain animal should have. And as people, our diet is not what you see in the boxes on the shelves in the supermarket, is it? And if we had an owner, if we were a pet, I'm pretty sure that our owner wouldn't be feeding us with some of the stuff that we choose to put in our own mouth. So need to parent ourselves and think of what is the best thing for us to have. And I think the more we can parent ourselves, the better choices we make. Because when we are a parent, we're very good at helping our little ones choose what's best for them to go to bed because we know they're going to be cranky and maybe they'll even get sick if they don't get rest. We'll say, oh no, that's too many sweet things now. You're going to be bouncing off the walls. Like, very good at looking after others. So if we can look after ourselves like we can look after others, like our kids and our pets, we won't be going far wrong. So that's it for today. I wish you well, and I will see you in the next session. So thank you so very much.